Coming up, why I chose live rock versus dry rock for this new tank build. Okay, for years I had always started my reef tanks with live rock and had great success. Live rock comes with a good population of bacteria and you can cycle a tank pretty quickly. However, about 5 years ago I decided to give it a go with dry rock. With dry rock you can take your time sculpting cool and unique aquascapes, and the likelihood of importing pests is much lower versus live rock. Live rock also has been much harder to find during the last few years. Well, to say the least, my experience with dry rock was a disaster. I had one problem after another, including dinos, a bacterial bloom, and cyanobacteria. And I just couldn't grow SPS like I had before. I mean, geez, I had never had any of these issues in my other tanks started with live rock, so it was very frustrating. Eventually, I broke the tank down and restarted it with Haitian live rock I picked up at a local fish store in Orlando, Florida. The reboot worked and the SPS in the tank flourished. So when I thought about dry rock versus live rock for my new Peninsula tank, the choice seemed clear. I know many folks have success with SPS in dry rock only tanks, but in my view it takes a lot of time before SPS can thrive in a tank started with only dry rock. And I truly believe the lack of biodiversity in dry rock is a key factor. Anyway, I did find a couple of viable options for live rock suppliers and settled on KP Aquatics since I'd heard some good things about them from some fellow reefers. They aquaculture live rock in the Florida Keys and can deliver it overnight. They talked me into paying some extra bucks to have it delivered in water versus wet newspaper, and apparently the survival rate for the bacteria, coralline algae, and other creepy crawlers was much better versus the newspaper option. Makes sense. My only hesitation was that some bad hitchhikers would come along for the ride, but I was told they could be forced out of the rock by dipping it in fresh salt water with a very high specific gravity. Anyway, I was digging this in-water option. So I ordered 100 pounds of the rock for $8 a pound and paid about $200 for shipping, so it came out to about $10 a pound. Not terrible. Due to COVID, KP Aquatics was only using Southwest Airlines as a freight carrier, so I was going to have to make a 3-hour road trip to Albany, New York to pick up the rock. Southwest does not have a terminal at my home airport in Burlington, Vermont. I arrived at the airport and loaded the rock in my car, and to my surprise, it didn't really smell, which I thought was a good sign. There was just a hint of salt water in the air. I made it home later that night, unloaded the rock, and transported it into the house. Now the fun part, unboxing it. I discovered a ton of life crawling on the rock, including a bunch of brittle starfish and some crabs. As recommended, I rinsed each piece in fresh salt water and then dipped them again in salt water with a high specific gravity. This caused a number of other critters to pop out of the rock. More brittle starfish, crabs, some pistol shrimp, and a mantis shrimp. I separated out the hitchhikers I didn't want in the tank, namely the crabs, pistol shrimp, and mantis shrimp, and dropped them off at a local fish store the next day, so nobody was rubbed out. That night, all of the rock was placed in the new system to start the cycle, and during the cycling process over the next week, I rinsed the rock 2 more times in salt water with a high specific gravity to make sure other pests didn't make the display their permanent home. Overall, I could not be more pleased with the quality of this rock. There was a ton of biodiversity, beautiful coralline algae, and even sponges. It was also very porous, a good thing since there was more surface area for the bacteria. Anyway, many thanks for watching, and if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. One last thing, if you need help with a new tank build, including help designing a custom aquarium or help reconfiguring your current setup, then feel free to reach out to me. I will put a link in the video description below. And if you are looking to add some equipment, I do sell GHL, Bellum, and Royal Exclusiv products, including Dreamboxes, which is the equipment I use and recommend, so again I will put a link in the video description below. Again, thanks for watching, see you next time.